Yesterday, we have seen that the war has reached the Indian doorstep, not inside our territory, not inside our waters also, but in our strategic waters.
My only thing is, did Indian Navy know about this US submarine in southern Indian Ocean waters? Yes, sir. That's it.
Here it is not just Trump alone. And how it gets linked to regime changes, because many of these negotiations frustrated Trump, and he realized that as long as this regime was in power, they will neither abandon the pursuit of nuclear weapons nor abandon the ICBM. So I'm saying that Trump has taken a gamble. So far, it seems to me the Americans are winning. I don't see the Iranian military, the core military, in terms of their missiles and AD lasting too long.
Hello and welcome. You're watching me, Sanket Upadhyay, on the Federal. The show is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news, because news in India today requires not artificial, but analytical intelligence. As far as the Iran-US war is concerned, a lot was being said here in India that it does not directly concern us. The war is nowhere close to us. Yes, it will have its economic impact. We need to brace for that impact. However, directly we are not affected. Well, all of that changed last night. Last evening, a US military submarine, which was lurking in the Indian Ocean, not in India's waters, but in India's strategic waters, in the outer periphery, and it hit an Iranian frigate which was participating in a joint naval exercise and was invited to India by Indians, by the Indian Navy. So gone is that moment where we can turn around and say that we have nothing to do with this war, because it is at our doorstep. In a situation like this, when a frigate or a warship which comes in on our invitation can then not go back in our strategic waters, where we claim to have naval superiority, it begs a lot of questions. Were we unaware of this US submarine? And more importantly, if we were aware, did we allow the hitting of the Iranian frigate? Let's put this to a quick discussion. Joining us right now are two extremely eminent people who have been monitoring what is happening right now and would want to ask them how we should look at it here in India. Should or should not India respond now that you have a situation where the war is at our doorstep? So we have Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, former retired General Officer of the Indian Army, and Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, Senior Research Consultant at CRF and Defence Analyst and Strategic Affairs Expert. Thank you very much, Colonel Agarwal, as well as Lieutenant General Shukla. Lieutenant General Shukla, I want to begin with you first. Now, only yesterday, we have seen that the war has reached the Indian doorstep, not inside our territory, not inside our waters also, but in our strategic waters. And this now becomes very crucial, because you have a lot of people commenting on how, guests who had come to participate in our event have been attacked by America. So America clearly playing the bully and deciding to take the war way beyond its, area of theatre. I want to ask you, Lieutenant General Shukla, what do you make of this?
Yes, Sanket, firstly, you see, I'm not a naval expert. So, you'll have to bear with that. But, somebody whom I greatly respect, Admiral Arun Prakash, he has tweeted to say that it was avoidable. But let me just, for the sake of discussion, throw this up and let's see what Rajiv has to say. Iran and the Americans are at war. So any naval ship, and this is a combat ship, is fair game. It was in an exercise, but it leaves the exercise and reaches international waters. Now, from the Iranian point of view, where was the ship going? When it traveled westward, would it not go headlong into the American deployment? So I'm not too sure what was it doing. And therefore, I'm of the view, it is escalatory, it could have been avoided. But if they are at war, and this is major combat operations, nothing of the gray zone sort, when your adversary vessel is in international waters, is it not a legitimate target? And I would defer to the superior wisdom of Admiral Arun Prakash and Admiral Monty Khanna and a few others. But this is my own independent take. I could be wrong.
No, fair enough. I understand, and a lot of people are expressing this view that
And
in a
I mean,
situation like this,
I wish to drive home this point to you and
Yeah.
to Rajeev. Where was the ship heading? I mean, if it was going westwards, was it not going headlong into the American Armada, which everybody knows was deployed? And it was not deployed to have fun, it was deployed for war. So I don't quite understand what was the design behind its movement westwards. If it had stayed behind at the Indian port, it would have been safe. The other bit of this is not strictly Indian waters, these are international waters. So I mean that's my take on it.
no, fair enough. I mean, you're entitled and open to your assessment. However, I'm sure you must have seen a lot of commentators and
I'm
questions.
telling you, Admiral Arun Prakash is somebody I greatly respect. He's the last word on these matters. He's of a different view. I mean, he said that it was avoidable. There's another very fine naval mind, Monty Khanna. He said this was not the best way to take them down. So I really don't understand what he was saying. Perhaps he was saying that a submarine torpedo was not the best way. Lives could have been avoided. But we are at war.
However, that war has not been declared from either side. It's a war-like situation. Whatever is happening is war, but the formal declaration has not happened. And thus, this question about
that Congress sanction is not there, but I've heard Trump personally saying major combat operations. Now, what does that mean?
Colonel Agarwal, your take. What do you think of this incident that has happened?
Yeah, Sanket. So I agree with General Shukla to the extent that is Iran and US are in a state of war, and a state of war, against the adversary who may unleash punitive potential against your soldiers or sailors. Anything is a fair game. My only concern is about how it has happened. So, to me, technically, legally, there's nothing wrong with a ship being attacked of an adversary in international waters. My only concern is that Indian Navy is supposedly, in know-how of everything that happens, at least in the southern Indian Ocean. That is what we call maritime security domain awareness, and we pride ourselves to one day become the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. So my only concern is, was Indian Navy aware of this lurking American submarine in international waters nearby and any hostile intention that it had? That is my only concern. Otherwise, legally and technically, this ship was at war, and in war, anything can happen.
Colonel Agarwal, so you feel that, and I don't know whether or not we'll get clarity on this, at least in the public domain, whether the Indian Navy was aware of a US submarine lurking in the waters, in India's strategic waters. However, this is outside of India's, authority, for lack of a better word. However, to have the intelligence of a US submarine is something which is in doubt right now, whether we knew or not. Now, if we knew about this, then there are a different set of questions. And if we did not know about this, then there are a whole lot of questions.
That's what I said, that this is my only concern, whether Indian Navy, which is supposed to be in know-how of the southern Indian Ocean region, the Arabian Sea to the west, and the Bay of Bengal to the east, did it know or not know whether a US submarine was in the southern Indian Ocean? And if it was, then whether Indian Navy thought it proper to do something about it, or knowing that an Iranian ship was sailing across the southern coast of Sri Lanka, have any coordination with Sri Lankan Navy, etc. I mean, there are a whole lot of things that could be asked. And like General Shukla, I am not a naval expert to comment on how these things function and all. My only thing is, did Indian Navy know about this US submarine in southern Indian Ocean waters? Yes or no? That's it.
Lieutenant General Shukla, should we or should we not know about this? Shouldn't we know about this? Whether our Navy was aware or not?
See, for that you'll have to get into where was this American submarine? Which part of the Arabian Sea was it in it? And there are large parts of the Arabian Sea which are international waters. See, this is the Indian Ocean, but it is not the Indian Lake. I think in naval terms, these are international waters. Now, they didn't attack any Indian assets. They did not target any Indian offshore installation. They took out an Iranian vessel which was at sea when, in my view, formal hostilities had broken out. So I'll return to my point. Where was this Iranian vessel heading to? It makes no sense to me to be in international waters when you know, and you had just the last night 9 or 10 of your ships sunk. The Iranians had lost some ships. So where was this heading to? And from a combatant point of view, to me it appears fair game. Along the LC, LAC, such kind of things happen every day. Now there, strictly law doesn't kick in. These are combat opportunities which, in my view, nobody would would let go a begging, because you were at war. These are formal hostilities. They haven't targeted that ship when it was, say, in the Indian port, when the exercise was going on. They waited for that all the fleet review to get over. And we will return, when we return to the larger discussions, there is something, just from a military point of view, unprofessional about the Iranian response. So let me come to it straight away. You have been targeted so many times over the last 2 years. And I'm here not blaming the Iranian political leadership, but the IRGC and the military. And you assemble 48 of your top leaders in a compound which you know will be being surveilled by the Iranians and the Americans. There is no doubt. And you expose them over ground. And your network is heavily penetrated. What both the Americans and the Israelis had the pattern of life of the supreme leader and people around him. They knew what he did in the last 48 hours, what he would do in the next 48 hours. Now, all these are infirmities from the military lens for which I think the Iranians are paying a price.
I think that's an important point, Lieutenant General Shukla, which you have made, and let's focus on the remainder of the discussion on this only. Colonel Agarwal, you see now very clearly the theater of this conflict is widening. And in a situation like this and the escalation that we are seeing, an obvious question that will be asked is, who will fold up first? Who will blink first? And will it be the Iranians? So, Colonel Agarwal, I want to ask you that given this escalation, do you feel that it is correct thinking on the part of the Americans and the Israelis that they will box Iran? Or is this, for lack of a better word, wishful thinking?
See, Sanket, things have definitely not gone as per plan as far as the US and Israel are concerned, because by most accounts, they thought that it will be a war, if not over by the weekend, but in 4 to 5 days. Now they are talking of 4 to 5 weeks. Yesterday, Secretary of War has said it could stretch to 8 to 9 weeks, and if more, that is required. So right now, it is stretching beyond the desired plan or desired wish, if I can say, that they had planned for when they took out the Supreme Leader and the 40-odd top generals. And I fully agree with General Shukla. I mean, it was absolutely foolhardiness for Iranian top leadership to gather in such large numbers after having not one, but two previous instances when the Hamas chief was eliminated, and then the 12-day war when a whole lot of, top leadership was eliminated. Just to count, the IRGC, Revolutionary Guard Corps, I think has already lost 5/6 commanders who have been nominated one after another in the two wars, the June war and this war. So that point is there. But as far as the war which is going to conclude, or the way it is progressing, I don't think it is a war of a clash as far as military superiority is concerned, or military power is concerned. Iran is no match as far as the military superiority of Israel and US is concerned, whether it is technology, whether it is numbers, whether it is reach, anything that you count of in military terms, there is no match. So that is why Iran is fighting asymmetrically, both in terms of the military objectives that it has set for itself, as well as the kind of targeting that it is doing. So that is why you see the extended battlefield now, which exists, about which you said, it has now encompassed the entire Gulf region. And earlier they said that they would be only targeting military bases, but over the past few days, two things have been added. One is civilian infrastructure, and now we see repeatedly energy infrastructure being targeted. And Iran is trying to impose additional costs on the war, and to see if the pressure both on US Israel as well as the external pressure on them works before a key inflection point comes about, where US and Israel are thinking that Iranians would fold up and surrender.
Lieutenant General Shukla, in a situation like this, do you think it will be silly to assume that while yes, from a numbers point of view, from an army point of view, from an expanse point of view, it is asymmetrical, as Colonel Agarwal mentioned. But it has been asymmetrical not today, it has always been asymmetrical in front of the might of the West. And yet you have a situation where Iran has stood its ground. For better or for worse, it has. So do you feel that we are entering into an elongated war, a theater of conflict, which Iran can sustain? Unless you have boots on the ground, unless there is an invasion, how else can you, from controlling the skies, can you control Iran?
Yeah, so now this is the most interesting part of the discussion. So just give me a few minutes. I wish to explain a few things from my perspective. From the point of view of Trump, he is gambling his presidency. He is a gambler. May I also note that you have in Trump and Netanyahu two outliers, two gamblers in a very status quoist universe. That's another point we must make. When Trump was making up his mind, the professional advice that he received from Dan Kane was, firstly, the military warned him on several accounts. The limitations of the interceptors, this business of getting into forever wars. But finally, they told him, I'm told, that it will be high risk and high reward. Now, so let's see, what are the risks and what are the rewards? Trump was very clear from his point of view. And what is he seeking, in my view? He's seeking regime change, but without a forever war. That was his campaign promise. So not more than 6-8 weeks. That I'm certain. Trump is not going to get into a forever war. Either he, simply overwhelms the Iranian military, or he looks for an off-ramp. That is the second point. Now, this regime change point must be understood. Both the professional advice to Trump as also Netanyahu's persuasions were punctuated by two factors. One was that despite Trump's claims of obliterating their, nuclear wherewithal last year, there was definite evidence that they were once again enriching uranium in a place called the Pickaxe Hill. So the enrichment had begun. So the Iranians were not prepared to forsake their nuclear weapons. The second point was that they were pretty, shall we say, accelerating their missile framework. And what was getting dangerous was that the ranges were increasing. They were getting more sophisticated into the hypersonic range and so on and so forth. And they would soon target Europe and maybe some years down the line, USA. Now, one thing the Americans will not accept, and this is just not Trump, this is the professional military setup there. Long-range missiles which are nuclear-tipped. They have learned this lesson from North Korea. So here it is not just Trump alone. And how it gets linked to regime changes, because many of these negotiations frustrated Trump, and he realized that as long as this regime was in power, they will neither abandon the pursuit of nuclear weapons nor abandon the ICBM plan or dream. So I'm not saying this is not just maverick Trump. It is part maverick, part risk taker Trump, but a lot of professional advice. Now that is where this regime change business gets linked. Now the other issue was what people called, missile mathematics. Who would run out of their inventory first? Would the Iranians run out of their missiles first? Or would the Americans run out of their interceptors first? That was the missile mathematics, which would decide the duration of the war. But what happened was this. These decapitation strikes, the strike on Pastor in that compound where you had these 48 leaders taken out in 5 minutes, that has greatly changed the dynamic. Because in the absence of this, it's like Sanket, World War II, on the first 2 days, you take out Montgomery, you take out Patton, 71, you take out Sam Manekshaw, Sagat Singh. It is a pretty big thing. Now, because of that, the Americans have gained momentum. In what sense? Now, here is the critical phase. So far, they were targeting from standoff distances, from Iraqi airspace and Saudi airspace, with Sparrow missiles and all, which are accurate, but they have limitations. Now, because of their ability to take out these, the leaders, their response, the Iranian response was supposed to be 1,000 missiles in 4 hours. They could fire only 100 missiles in 24 hours because of command and control losses, so on and so forth. And the second thing is that the volley or the momentum of the responses, drones and missiles, is gradually petering out. So what the Americans have succeeded in doing is taking out the radars and targeting the missiles, the silos, the launchers, the production capacities, the whole missile framework. And they are now getting confident of moving from standoff to stand-in air power attacks, which means GPS-enabled precise weapons. And if this momentum takes off and they manage to get control, intimate control of the Iranian skies, that is when the game will change. To me, it appears they will achieve this, but that is where their problems begin. Because this regime change business, this hope that, the revolt of the Kurds with protesters will change into a larger agency as a substitute for boots on the ground, is where I have question marks. So while they may get intimate control of the air, regime change in that sense is a very difficult proposition, because the whole IRGC military besiege apparatus is 1 million strong and goes down to the mosques and to every mohalla. So that is where Trump's challenge really begins. So I think in the first phase, the Americans have done well, as they always do, and we must give credit to them for that. The ability to assemble military prowess 4,000 kilometers away from your shores is not easy. That has worked with clockwork precision. But the real test will start when they have to find ways, on ground for this regime change, whether it is with special forces or Mossad. That is when their troubles will begin, as they traditionally have. If you just take your mind back to Afghanistan, American air power was crafted on Ahmad Shah Massoud. Without Ahmad Shah Massoud, Taliban would not have been overthrown. So I'm saying that Trump has taken a gamble. So far, it seems to me the Americans are winning. I don't see the Iranian military, the core military, in terms of their missiles and AD lasting too long. But the difficult thing will begin when you have to convert this air power advantage into, a power transition on ground. And that, unless you put boots on the ground, the other mechanisms that the Americans hope for, to me, seem to be pretty difficult. And when those body bags start returning, and if things don't go well, both Israel and USA, they have elections sometime down in the year. That is where, opposition may mount, and that may cost the Trump presidency dearly. So at the moment, I think it is advantage USA, but the conversion is yet to happen.
Sure. Colonel Agarwal, I'm just seeing this article that you've written for India Today, where you say it was supposed to be a quick operation. The Iranian regime was to fall. What happened? Why are tables turning so soon? Now, obviously, you've written this on the 3rd of March. Are we to assume your opinion has changed, or does it remain largely the same, where you feel that it is not going to be accurate to assume that the Iranians will fold up?
Yeah, so I would still say that we are in the sixth day and not much has changed. Definitely, the United States and Israel have overwhelming military superiority, and they have, they have taken out many military targets as well as infrastructure targets in Tehran, and 200, 300 sorties are going uninhibited inside Iranian territory. But Iran is not contesting militarily. That is what I am trying to say, and that is what I have written in the article also. They are not trying to contest militarily. Because they do not have adequate air power in terms of fighter jets, and they have a very weak and limited air and missile defense. They are only depending on the success of limited success that they can have in their missiles and drones penetrating through the highly overlapping and very tough air and missile defense as far as the US and Israel are concerned, and which they have done. There are multiple hits which are happening in Israel, and across the Gulf we have seen how many hits have taken place in the region. Coming to one point which General Shukla had said about the ballistic missile. So my take on it is slightly different, because ballistic missiles constitute a factor of conventional military power, and conventional military power is a factor under any kind of international law which is governed by how a nation needs to secure its national and security interest. To just give you an example, although it is too way off, but just to put it for a discussion sake, tomorrow if Pakistan says that India has got BrahMos and Agni and Prithvi and they are existential threats to me, and therefore it tells US to take it out, then what is going to happen? Or tomorrow if China, which has got extremely potent military deployment in the eastern Ladakh and high range missiles which are making India's security vulnerable, then will India go to somewhere, US, Russia, etc., to say that China is posing existential threat to us and that should be taken out? Nuclear weapons, yes, I agree. Nuclear weapons is a thing which is a red line for the entire world, and whichever countries have got it, whether India has also got it and others have got it, but any other nuclear weapon proliferation should be prevented by anyhow. But ballistic missile is a conventional military capability, and that cannot be put under the what should I say, threat of negotiation, that you have to give up your ballistic missile program because you may pose a threat to us in the future. So that is my take on it.
All right. Towards the end, just want to ask this one question, circling back to this issue which has recently happened only yesterday. Just one quick take. We'll begin with you, Lieutenant General Shukla, first. Do you feel India should at least respond or issue a statement to what has happened in our neighborhood or at our doorstep with regards to a submarine and a frigate? Because so far there is no response.
Yeah, Indian officialdom, I would know more. Now, since I don't know what the facts are, based on what I see in the public domain, I will go back to what I said initially. What do I say? They were no more part of the fleet review. They had left the fleet review. They were in international waters. Now it is between those two adversaries. So publicly, what do I say? But I'm very sure that, some back channels would have opened up and some communications would have been exchanged between us and the Americans. But publicly, I do not see what I can say, because it is in international waters. Hostilities are between those two countries.
Okay. Colonel Agarwal, your take.
Yeah.
Should India at least issue a statement?
No, I don't think so, because on what basis will be issue a statement? What I said about Indian Navy knowing, not knowing, dominating the Southern Indian Ocean as a part of its maritime security awareness. That was all part of what we would have known or not known. But publicly or officially, how does India respond to it? When it is a state of war and it has happened in international waters? Back channels, yes, like General Shukla said, somebody must have said something, condoled it, or something must have happened, that would happen, but very difficult for India. And remember, we have still not offered condolences on the death of the supreme leader of Iran, who, apart from being a religious and spiritual leader, was the head of state of a nation. So, we have not gone that far. So how do we expect Indian government to issue a statement on a downing of a Iranian ship in international waters far away from us?
Yeah, because this has happened closer home. That's the logic. Yes, Lieutenant General Shukla.
I
Yes.
wanted to make one point which is connected, but also a larger point. See, India now is the fourth economy, going to be the third. If you see the Lowy Institute, it ranks us as the third in terms of comprehensive national power, which means we are entering the big league now. Now, if we are entering the big league and we have to, be at least in future be able to be have greater influence in these matters, we have to step up our capacities. We have to step up our capacities in a manner that we have a very strong A2 AD in the IOR. Without capacities, it is pointless issuing statements. So we must look at our budgets. 1.98% of the GDP is not good enough for a country which is now third, just behind the Americans and the Chinese. If we step up our capacities in the IOR, if we can project power beyond Malacca, we'll be in a better position to preempt and to respond. So I'm saying first build capacities and then talk of statements. Unfortunately, the pace of creation of those capacities is lacking in our case. And for long, I've been arguing that we must do far more in terms of capacity. This is a time to turn to the sea, Sanket. The Chinese have a 400-ship navy. It's not going to patrol their coastlines. In 5 to 8 years, 10 years, it will be here. So we need to do that. I'm saying this is a time for us to hide and buy, to build our capacities, because these are good signals for us. You never know what happens tomorrow. And as General Sundarji used to very famously say, build capacities because capacities take generations to create, while intentions change overnight.
How well said. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Shukla, as well as Colonel Agarwal. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast.
Thank you.